Hello everyone. Today we'll be talking about simple linear regression. So why the word regression? This is actually a very old story. One statistician tried to see what is the relationship between height of sons and height of fathers. So height of fathers and height of sons. And what he observed was that if suppose this is the average height of individuals in that particular country, then fathers who were taller than average, say height here, had sons who were taller than average. Of course, generally we know that the heights of parents and their children are related, but if this is father's height, then he observed that son's height was closer to the average. Even though it was on the same side of the average, it was closer to the average. Same picture was observed even in fathers who had less than average height. Their sons also were shorter than average, but they were more closer to the average. So he felt that over the generations, the height is going back towards mean from either direction. Okay, hence he gave the name regression towards mean, this phenomenon, and that's how the name stayed. Okay, but we will now see that there are many aspects to it. It's not always limited to regression towards mean. So first of all, we need to revise what we know about correlation. Okay, now when do I talk about correlation, regression, or anything of that sort? I have two variables, say x and y, which are possibly related to each other. Okay, so it could be height, weight, it could be income and expenditure, it could be demand and price, it could be supply and price, or any such pair. So I have two variables x and y which are possibly related, and I want to model the relationship between these two variables. Okay, so first there comes the concept called covariance, which in some way tries to quantify the relationship. Okay, so we have studied mean, we have studied variance for individual variables. Now we have two variables and we want to capture relationship between those two variables, so we have a concept of covariance. So how does it work? So I can define covariance of xy as expectation of x minus mu x into y minus mu y, where mu x is my population mean for x, and mu y is population mean for y. So what is the logic behind this? Let me go to the sample version of this. So sample covariance between xy based on say n observation of x and y pairs would be 1 upon n sum over I going from 1 to n xi minus x bar into yi minus y bar. Okay. Now, what does xi mean here? So if I am talking about say height and weight, so if x denotes height and y denotes weight, then xi yi denote height and weight of ith person. So basically they should belong to the same person. Okay. Now this is the sample version of the covariance. It is slightly easier to interpret from the sample version. Now there are three possibilities. SCOV is greater than 0, SCOV is less than 0, or SCOV is equal to 0. Equal to 0 is very rare in the case of a sample, at least. In population it can happen. Now SCOV greater than 0 would mean that this sum is positive. This sum is positive means more or less most of these terms are positive. Okay, if we assume that they are more or less of similar magnitude. Okay, now if many of these terms are positive, that means that if xi minus x bar is greater than 0, then corresponding y minus y bar is also greater than 0. Or on the other hand, if xi minus x bar is less than 0, I don't need this bar here, then corresponding yi minus y bar is also less than 0. Okay. So SCOV is positive would mean that generally we have positive positive pair or negative negative pair. Okay. So what does it mean? It means that for xi's which are higher than average, generally corresponding yi's also tend to be higher than average, and for xi's which are lower than average, generally yi's also tend to be lower than average. Okay. So it would mean that xi yi values are kind of behaving in a similar manner. If xi is low, yi is also low. If xi is high, yi is also high. So we would say here that the two variables are positively related with each other. Okay. This is exact opposite case. Here I would say that okay, most of the pairs xi minus x bar, y minus y bar have negative sign, which would mean that xi minus x bar greater than 0 is mainly associated with y minus y bar less than 0, or vice versa. Means xi minus x bar less than 0 is mainly associated with y minus y bar greater than 0. So, higher than average values of x are generally associated with lower than average values of y. Similarly, lower than average values of x are generally associated with higher than average values of y. Okay. So in such case, we would say that the variables are negatively related to each other. And if the covariance is 0, then it would mean that generally they are not related to each other. Okay, things are kind of cancelling out. Okay. Now, why am I saying they are not related? So that's easier to understand from population version. So a simplified version of this formula is expectation of xy minus mu x mu y. So expectation of xy minus mu x mu y is 0 would mean that expected xy is generally same as mu x mu y. So it means that expectation of the product is same as product of the expectations. So they are not affecting each other. Okay. Hence we would say they are uncorrelated. We can give a detailed argument by going through conditional probabilities etc. but I won't go there. Okay. But so covariance greater than 0 means positively related, covariance less than 0 means negatively related. But I shouldn't be happy with just positive negative. I would like to know what is the extent of the relationship. Is it strong relationship or weak relationship etc. But the problem is, by looking at the value of covariance, I may not be able to judge. Because covariance, you can see, we can again go to the formula. Covariance is expectation of x minus mu x, y minus mu y. So, covariance would depend on scale of values of x and y. For example, if I record heights in say meters, okay, and if I record weight in say kilograms, then I'll have some value of covariance. Let me call it say C1. Okay. Now I convert these same heights to centimeter and this weight to grams. So what would happen to my xy values? My new x would be 100 times original x because height has been converted from meter to centimeter, and new y would be 1000 times old y because weight has been converted to grams. So covariance between new x and new y would be expectation of 100 times x minus mu x, because mu x will also be multiplied by 100, into 1000 times y minus mu y, right? Because these are old x and y. So this becomes 100,000 times covariance of original xy. So this covariance becomes much larger than the old covariance. But of course we know that we are talking about the same data set, just the units have changed. So change in units should not really lead to a new conclusion. Hence, the magnitude of covariance is not directly interpretable. Okay, because of these issues. It depends lot on the scale and hence it is not directly interpretable. So you can't say how high is too high or how low is too low. Okay. Hence, people came up with another measure to model such relationship and it is known as correlation. Correlation is kind of a covariance between scaled versions of the random variable. Okay, so correlation between xy would be same as covariance between x minus mu x upon sigma x and y minus mu y upon sigma y. You might remember that these are similar to what you did in z-score or standard normal computation. So you are subtracting mean, means mean of this new variable is 0, mean of this new variable is 0 and variance of these two new variables is 1. Okay. There is a better form. We can also write correlation between xy as covariance between xy and square root of variance of x and variance of y. Now let us see what happens in case of correlation if I use the new variables that we had defined above. Okay, so correlation between x new and y new would be 1 0 0 0 0 0 times covariance between old x and y. Okay, because we have already seen that covariance between new x y is this. Variance of new x would be expectation of x new minus mu x new whole square. Because we have 100 sitting over both the places, it becomes 100 square old variance. Okay, so this becomes 100 times old variance. This becomes 100 square times old variance. This becomes 1000 square times old variance. So if I take outside square root, these three constants get cancelled and I am left with old covariance divided by, this is v, okay, this is not r, square root of old variance. So this is nothing but correlation between xy. So correlation between new and old variables is the same. So correlation is not affected by change of units. Okay, that is important and very useful property of correlation. Okay, hence correlation is preferred over covariance. In fact, further nice properties of correlation is always between -1 and +1. So you can actually see how large is large, how small is small. So generally values to near this we would say strong positive dependence or strong positive relationship, and values near here we will say strong negative relationship, and values here we will say no correlation. Okay. Generally the rule of thumb is correlation above 0.7 in magnitude either side is called as strong correlation. Between 0.3 to 0.7 is kind of moderate correlation, and generally below 0.3 is called as almost no correlation. Of course, this is very crude rule. There are formal tests which can be used to check whether a correlation is non-zero. Okay. So now correlation is used to capture or quantify the extent of relationship. Now, what to do when I want to see whether a particular what is the exact form of relationship between two variables. Okay, so the simplest thing that we do is we draw a scatter plot. So I have x here, I have y here, I try to plot xy. So if this is something like this, means with increase in x, y is also increasing, we are going to conclude they are positively related, right? On the other hand, if it had been something like this, that is with increase in x, y is decreasing, then we are going to say they are negatively related. One important point we should always remember is this correlation is measuring only the extent of linear relationship. So if you have something like a parabolic relationship, let's say, okay, so you have xy related in this fashion. If the scatter plot looks something like this, you may end up getting zero correlation, but still they are related because there is some form of pattern to this relationship. But usual correlation coefficient cannot capture this. Usual correlation coefficient computes only linear correlation, so the extent of linear relationships. Okay, so suppose I have this or I have this. Can I formulate it mathematically further? Means, can I draw some line which kind of approximate this relationship? Maybe something like this here. So that is what regression actually does. Okay, so the job of regression is to provide you an equation to predict value of one variable using the value of other variable. Okay, so we will first talk about simple linear regression. So linear, you know, we try to model only the linear relationship, so it is linear. And simple because we will have only one value x. Okay, so y and x, we have only two variables. In practical life, you can have y, x1, x2, etc. For example, height of son would depend on height of mother as well as height of father, and plus some effect from nurturing, whether the person is a sports person and so on. Okay. On the other hand, in simple linear regression, we are going to take only one variable. Okay. So the equation to model this is y equal to beta naught plus beta 1x plus epsilon. So epsilon is kind of like error part because no model is perfect. Every model is kind of an approximation. We saw the scatter plot here, right? So you can see that these points are not exactly on the scatter plot. There is some individual variation. So even if you know height of a person, you can't perfectly predict heights of their sons and daughters. Okay, because there will be some random factors which cannot be modeled. So to capture all those factors, this error component is sitting over here. Okay, epsilon. This, in your usual geometry terms, this is known as intercept and this is known as slope. We have seen this. Okay, so when we say that we have to fit a regression model to the data, what we try to do is we try to estimate value of beta naught and beta 1 from the given data. Okay, so if this is my scatter plot, what choice of beta naught beta 1 would give me the best fit? There are many possibilities. You see here, here, but we say that okay, this type of line probably makes more sense. Okay, so this is the job of simple linear regression. So how do we estimate the values? We estimate the values via something known as least squares approach. Okay, so what does the least square approach do? It does something quite interesting. So it tries multiple lines and finally it chooses that line which minimizes this vertical distance. Okay, it doesn't have to be 90 degrees, just the vertical distance. So distance of each point from the line, if you draw a vertical line, straight line. Okay, why? Because this line is kind of my predicted value from the model and these are observed actual values. So you try to choose beta naught and beta 1 in such a way that difference between observed value and predicted value, this gap shouldn't be much. Okay, so what do you do in least square approach? You say that predicted value y hat is actually beta naught plus beta 1 x. Beta naught hat, beta 1 hat are predicted values. So you say that you want to minimize sum over yi minus yi hat whole square. Why square? Because if you don't take square, then positive and negative errors would cancel out and you will unnecessarily feel that you are getting zero error, which is not correct. Okay, so if you try using this, we do get value of beta 1 hat as sxy upon sxx. What is meant by that? It is summation xi minus x bar, yi minus y bar divided by summation xi minus x bar square. Okay, and beta naught hat would be y bar minus beta 1 hat x bar. Okay, so we try to compute variance. So this beta 1 hat can also be written as covariance between xy divided by variance of x. That is also possible. We are just dividing both numerator and denominator by n to get this. Okay, so this equation tells me how they are related. What else does this equation tell me? So when I say y is equal to beta naught plus beta 1x plus epsilon, I am ignoring epsilon when I write y hat, because y hat is expectation of y given x. So it is just beta naught plus beta 1x, because we assume that the errors tend to cancel each other out, and in the long run average error is 0, and we assume variance of epsilons is constant sigma square, and that epsilon i's are uncorrelated with each other. How much error is there in one person, it has nothing to do with how much error is there in the prediction for other person. Okay, because if they are related, then we can try to model them also. Here we assume the errors cannot be modeled. Okay, that's why they are not related. Now what is the interpretation of beta 1? So if I consider x plus 1, okay, so let us say y are the marks scored by a person in an exam, and suppose x is number of hours spent on studying per week. So we have data on many people. Some people spent say 2 hours per week, some people spent 10 hours per week, some people might have spent 40 hours per week, and so on. Okay, now what would happen to y if I change x? So we know y is beta naught plus beta 1x plus epsilon. So y hat, or expectation of y given x is equal to x, is beta naught plus beta 1x, and expectation of y given x equal to x plus 1 would be beta naught plus beta 1 x plus 1. So this is same as beta naught plus beta 1x plus beta 1. So you can see this is same. So this is expectation of y given x equal to x plus beta 1. Okay, so what is beta 1? Beta 1 is expected change, actually you can say expected increase. If it's negative, it would become decrease in y for a unit change in x, because x has been changed only from x to x plus 1, and then how much amount does y change? It changes by beta 1, and beta naught is intercept, so beta naught is value of y when x is equal to 0. For example, if you are trying to model height of a child via age, then when the children are born, at that time also they have some height, they don't start from 0, so that height becomes beta naught. Okay, so height at birth would become beta naught here. Okay, so this is the interpretation of beta naught and beta 1. So after getting the values of beta naught and beta 1, we have to decide whether these values are significant. What do I mean by significant? It may be possible that actually there is no relationship between x and y. So beta 1 is actually 0, but still, because of coincidence, in one particular sample I got say beta 1 value to be say 0.8, something like that. So we need to decide whether this value is actually positive or it is just a coincidence, actually it is 0. Okay, so this is decided by carrying out t-test for testing the null hypothesis beta naught equal to 0, and there is a separate t-test for beta 1 also. The alternative hypotheses are beta naught not equal to 0 and beta 1 not equal to 0. So the test statistic generally looks like beta hat upon standard error of beta hat for both. For beta naught you take beta naught, for beta 1 you take beta 1. And then using t-test we need to conclude whether the null hypothesis is rejected or accepted. If the null hypothesis is rejected, then we will say that yes, y and x are actually related. Okay, so if beta 1 is not equal to 0, that is if this alternative hypothesis is accepted, then we conclude that y and x are actually related. Okay, it's not just a coincidence. However, if the null hypothesis is accepted, means if we get beta 1 equal to 0, then we say that y and x are not linearly related. Okay, there may be a non-linear relationship, but at least they are not linearly related. Okay, in fact, generally we can also obtain a confidence interval for values of beta naught and beta 1. What is a confidence interval? So see, suppose there are say 30 people in your class and each of you collects data on say 100 people about their heights and weights, and you fit a regression model. Because your data is different, each one of you may get different value of beta naught hat and beta 1 hat. So beta naught hat and beta 1 hat are values which are obtained from the data. They are estimates, whereas actual beta naught and beta 1 will always be unknown. We are trying to guess them via the values that we obtain from the sample. Okay. Now, what we can do is, as I said, we can get a confidence interval. Generally it is 95% confidence interval. So we get some interval, say beta naught lower limit to beta naught upper limit. So it is said that in 95% of the cases, actual beta naught will lie in this interval. So each of you will get one interval. So there are 30 people, I'll get 30 intervals. Out of these 30, in 95% of the cases, the interval will contain beta naught. And this interval is actually related to this test statistic also. So if 0 belongs to this interval, then we conclude that the test null hypothesis is accepted. So if 0 belongs to the interval, say beta 1 lower limit to beta 1 upper limit, then we conclude that beta 1 is actually 0 and that the two variables are not related. Okay, most of the statistical software would provide us the p-value for the test statistic, and sometimes even the confidence interval for beta naught and beta 1. If beta naught is 0, then my model becomes simply y equal to beta 1x plus epsilon. Okay, so if the null hypothesis for beta naught is accepted but for beta 1 it is rejected, then our model becomes something like this. One more important parameter about a regression model is known as R-square. R-square is also called as coefficient of determination. It again decides the the strength of the relationship between x and y. So in simple linear regression, in the case of simple linear regression, this R square is equal to square of correlation between xy. Okay, so if correlation between xy is high, means if the two variables are strongly related, then R square is high. And because it is square of correlation, and we know correlation is between -1 to +1, so R square is always between 0 to 1. Okay, so generally whenever you fit a regression model, you check its R square value. If R square value is say above 0.7, then we generally say it's a good model. Okay, it's a very good model actually. If R square value is say between 0.3 to 0.7, then we say that it's a moderate model. What is the interpretation of R square? R square gives me the proportion of variation in Y explained by the change in values of X. Okay, what do I mean by this? Let me go back to the father son height example. So if Y is height of son and X is height of father, and suppose R square turns out to be say 0.6, it means that 60% of the variation in heights of sons can be explained by heights of fathers. But there are still 40% chances that there are some other factors which are contributing. 40% of the contribution comes from other factor. So it may be height of mother, or it may be the nutrition received, or the exercises done, etc., etc. Okay, so this tells me that there is still 40% of variation in Y which remains unaccounted for. So we need some other factors to explain that variation. Only 60% variation can be explained by this. So R square is a good way of deciding whether our model is good or not. What do I mean by model being good or bad? It means whether the regressors that we have selected, are they sufficient or not. Do we need more regressors to explain the variation in Y? Okay, if R square is very low, it means the regressor that I have chosen is not enough to give me a complete picture about Y. So I need to worry about getting more regressors. Hence, it is mandatory that whenever you fit a regression model, you check the R square value. Okay, so let me try to show you some example. So this Minitab is one of the statistical software. I don't know if you have seen it. It's not actually free, but you can get a 30-day trial version. I can send you R commands also, but in Minitab it's menu driven. So for the time being, we'll try with Minitab because we want to focus more on the interpretation. So first thing generally we should do is keep our cursor in session window and then do editor enable commands. Okay, let me import some data and we will try to fit a regression model. Okay, yeah, this bears 2 is an interesting data set. So this is a data on some bears and their physical characteristics. So ID is to identify which bear it is, then sex of the bear, age of the bear, head length, head width, neck girth, chest girth and weight. So see, the problem here is when the tribal people kill the bear and sell it, they want to decide the price on the basis of weight. But weighing a bear in in a forest is difficult. So we want to see, is there any way by which we can guess the weight via other parameters. So head length, head width, neck girth, chest girth, these are things which can be easily measured, right? You just need a thread and scale. Okay, whereas weight is something different. You need a scale, and that too a scale good enough to weigh a bear. Okay, so let us try to fit. So maybe what we can do is we can simply go for fitted line plots and try with different things. So response Y, predictor head length. This we don't want. Okay, see, we get this equation. This is the graph. The blue dots represent the actual data. We get this equation, weight equal to this plus this, and R square is 70.1%. Okay, so it's a pretty decent model. Let me try other regressors. So we tried head length. So let me try head width, neck girth and chest girth. So head width, with head width R square is bad. So head width is definitely less useful than head length. Let us try neck girth and chest girth. See, with neck girth, most of the points are very close to the line, and as a result my R square is quite high, 93.6%. So neck girth is a very good predictor for weight. Okay. Similarly, we can try chest girth. Oh, I'm sorry. Response is still weight and predictor is chest girth. Chest girth is also quite good with R square 92.1%. Okay. Let us now see this model in detail. So let me go to regression, fit regression model with neck girth, because we saw that neck girth is giving me the best value of R square. So let us try neck girth. What all things we get from this model? First thing is equation. So this equation tells me that if neck girth is increased by 1 unit, whichever unit it is measured in, say centimeters or inches, then weight increases by 22.6 units. So if it's in kilogram, then 22.6 kilogram. If it's in pounds, then 22.6 pounds. Okay. So this is p-value for regression, means overall whether my model, is it significant or not, is it giving me something useful or not. So this p-value is less than 0.05 is a good thing, which means that my model is useful. It is contributing something. It's not just predicting average. And now here I have individual p-values. Constant means intercept and this is slope. So for intercept as well as for slope, the p-values are very low. These are the values of their t-test statistic. And this tells me that okay, both constant, that is slope, and intercept are highly significant. That is, they are significantly different than 0 and they are pretty useful in predicting my response. Okay. So today we will stop the discussion of regression over here. We will now go to multiple linear regression in next lecture, and then we'll also study about some other ways in which we can check whether a model is good or bad. Okay. Thank you.